Find something that makes you happy. It's better for you to be happy in life.
Are we talking an ounce, a shot, a spritz on the face?
For me, it's every day a spritz on the face.
Oh, welcome in. Welcome in. Man, it sure feels like the theme lately on the podcast is going back in time and getting some old guests back on the show. I certainly haven't run out of content. I feel like there's no shortage of new guests to bring into the show, but man, it feels really, really good to come back and get a few of you OG guests on the show again. So welcome back, Emily. Emily McCune, how are you doing?
Great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Doing wonderful. So talk a little bit about our first experience on the podcast, Emily. You were episode number 3. I was just looking back, and this is really cool because this episode will be coming out. This is going to be like the 2-year anniversary episode. You were episode 3. We were sitting in my living room with just a microphone in the middle of my coffee table.
I remember.
So yeah, so it's cool. It's cool. I always enjoy that. You've been through a lot personally, professionally, even just in the last 2 years. So I'm excited to fill in some gaps and talk about that. We'll probably pick up a little bit, maybe pick up and recap on the cannabis industry a little bit. Obviously, Sugar High is a big part of what you do.
Yep.
But we have this new business. I don't even know if there's a name for it yet. If there is, I'll get it. But it's a patisserie.
There is a name.
Patisserie. There is a name?
Yes. The name of my patisserie is Coquette, which means flirt in French.
Ooh, okay. So we're going to get into Coquette, this new patisserie. I did a little bit of research to find out what it was. We'll get into all that, the history of it, what it means to bring that culture to Fergus Falls.
Great.
So I'm excited for it. But before we get going here, no alcohol today for you, no consumption of alcohol for you today, or potentially ever, maybe. But
again, correct.
I'm just drinking water here today myself, but we've got some Outstate beer on the table. Shout out Outstate, shout out Atlas Outdoor Services. I woke up with Stumbino's coffee this morning, so that's always a good way to start the day. Victor Lundine's Fergus Home and Hardware, Liberty Business Systems, and Wayne Schuett with Century 21. I appreciate all you guys who are a part of the show, continue to support the show, and allow us to have these conversations. So let's just hear, Emily, talk to me a little bit about your experience on the show the first time. How do you feel? Our conversation got a little rowdy. I mean,
it did.
It was a little off the rails at times.
We call it passionate. We call it passion. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. We would have been open for about 4 months only at that point. We opened in August of 22, the dispensary.
Yeah, okay.
About 5 months we would have been open.
Dang. Still here.
Oh, yeah. And it hasn't been without a fight. Well, I mean, I think what's on the forefront of everyone's mind as far as the cannabis industry goes is integration into a regulated marijuana market.
Right.
That vote, we won that vote in 2023. So since August of 2023, Minnesotans 21 and older have been legally able to cultivate and possess their own marijuana, with quantity amounts and so on, and cultivation limits and that. For those of us in the retail manufacturing industry, we've been in the hemp industry, rather, we've been just awaiting the rules and regulations from the Office of Cannabis Management to come together. And, I hate to even still use the expression fingers crossed because I do feel confident, but this will be the year that we successfully integrate. There have been improvements, there have been adjustments, there have been timelines fixed, application windows decided, things like that. So it's not been rolling out the way we anticipated or hoped.
Right.
Especially as pertains to the social equity application process, which,
I know when we had talked, it was a situation where we were ahead of the anticipated passing of the legislation, and we were saying this is coming, it appears to be coming.
Right.
And since it has been confirmed, I had an episode, I believe, with JP Elliott
Yeah.
about Lakes Area
Yeah.
GrowCo. I had Chris from Elevate on
Sure.
as well to talk about the industry.
Mhm.
Lots of stuff has changed in the
Yeah,
last couple years. But the social equity application was one of the things that I know we had talked a little bit about in that first episode was that fast track to getting licensed. And I feel like that's they kind of botched that program from I don't know. I mean, I'm just the outsider looking in, but can you talk about your experience with that a little?
Absolutely. So when I was last on, I believe I would have been in the headspace and mindset of we qualify as social equity applicants, because at that time the stipulations and criteria were veterans, women-owned, minority-owned, and anyone who has a cannabis conviction on their record. That was the sort of scoring criteria for where they would tier you at whether or not you qualified as a social equity applicant. And that was the case going forward until the fine print was published.
Right.
And for a lot of people, they were disqualified, my business included. In the fine print was language pertaining to LLC ownership. And one owner of the company has to have at least 65% ownership. And my business partner and I are 60-40 split. I'm majority owner at 60%. So right then and there, that kind of just DQ'd us for that. So we just kind of shifted into, well, we'll wait until they open the general application window. But what happened in the state that caused the uproar and the lawsuits and the litigations and all these things against the OCM was that there was speculation amongst the community of social equity applicants that the OCM was, I don't know which colorful word to use here, that they were unjustly denying social equity applications for various reasons. Bottom line, it was messy. It wasn't efficient. It wasn't streamlined. It wasn't timely. It changed the course of the plan for the timeline for everything else. But, we in the industry, there are different schools of thought. There are different groups of thinking. There's different theories. I have a theory that a lot of people who are in a position like mine, let's say, who have been operating an established hemp business, whether it's manufacturing edibles or retailing or making beverages, there are a lot of us that have been established already who understand that the integration into the regulated marijuana market is going to draw in a lot of people who were not previously in and established and who are just looking to get there.
And you don't necessarily have an advantage over them because you've been operating in the hemp space. There's no, that doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter to whoever's reviewing these applications.
Of course. So the speculation among a big demographic in the industry is that the OCM actually rightfully denied a lot of applicants, but people are just so chomping at the bit to get that license going, that application going, and integrate into a legal and regulated market that they're throwing all caution to the wind, and they're just emotions are high, tensions are high in the industry, and they have been for quite a while. It's really quite difficult to navigate through for me personally, and I'm assuming we might touch on that a little. We probably will a little bit later. It's very hot. It's very hot right now.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the good news is that the OCM still claims, and I have no reason not to believe them, that they are looking. They're rearing to get this going. They want to see a regulated legal market. They want to open the application window, which they have set a date now for February 18th. So the timeline is out. The timeline for them shifting through the qualified social equity applicants, getting that lottery going, accepting general applications, rifling through those, figuring out who actually qualifies, who doesn't, and then getting that lottery going.
I know that in the initial wording of HF 100, the bill that legalized cannabis, it states in there Q1 2025 retail sales must begin. Retail sales must begin Q1 2025. So that would put us end of Q1 April, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know if it'll be that soon that we see a local license.
But Q2.
Q2.
That's what we're thinking.
Realistic.
Now that they have the timeline published, there's an established timeline for when the OCM has to go through the applications and sort through qualified, not qualified.
Right.
And then of course, we go into the lottery, which is kind of another complex thing because, of course, the HF 100 bill I'll use the word protects. It protects rural Minnesota communities by stating that if any city or municipality with a population, and some of this might come back to you as we're talking about it, right?
We're going to get into city and municipality stuff a little bit because there's been some stuff that has gone down as well in the last year.
So to tie that together, the state legislation states that any city or municipality in Minnesota with a population of at least 14,000 that has an applicant will be issued one per every 14,000. They're required.
I thought it was like 12.5. I thought it was even lower than 14.
Excuse me. It's 12.5. I'm going on the population of Fergus Falls. You're correct. 12,005.
Yep.
And so that was a point of contention for a while in the city part. But that's what I mean when I say the HF 100 bill kind of protects us. So as opposed to, think about in the metro, there are going to be way more applications coming in for whether it's cultivation, retail, manufacturing, extraction, whatever, micro business, meso business. I think there are 12 or 14 different types of licenses.
So those different types of licenses, and I'm really curious about this because another one of the things that's happened since we've talked is you entered the retail distribution, like the wholesale distribution of your edible products.
Sure.
So obviously those are hemp-derived products right now. The licensing is mainly meeting, I don't know all the licensing and regulations that goes into that, but it's significantly less of a hurdle than I assume entering the legal cannabis
There's no
market.
required licensing.
Okay.
And it's not even a gray area. So what we entered into was manufacturing, first and foremost, the manufacturing of hemp-derived edible cannabis products. It's the same sector that the beverage companies in the state are going, the breweries, right? The state, under the state hemp bill, the hemp law, there's no actual state license required to obtain. You just have to abide by all city code. So in Fergus Falls, over the course of the last 2 years, as we have navigated creating this industry that did not exist, we have gone through the channels and the processes of, well, let's get an ordinance drafted that regulates this. Of course, in 2023, we were trying to secure a location in the B3 business district to manufacture, and that caused some energy amongst city officials, ending with or resulting in an ordinance drafted and imposed that regulates the location of where we can manufacture edible cannabinoid products, which is limited to the industrial commercial zone, which is where we rent our kitchen.
Okay.
So as we've been navigating this, I mean, the city has been in some ways very challenging, in other ways very helpful and reasonable. It's not unreasonable to have regulations imposed.
No.
It actually protects us.
And there are certain things that the state allows the city to make determinations on as far as zoning goes, as far as proximity to certain things within our community. And I think that has caused, obviously it's caused a lot of debate. There was some, I think the last, if I'm not correct, the last city council meeting you attended was probably a little heated, and it got to a point where you're like, you know what, this just isn't worth it for me to fight this fight this way.
Yeah.
It's maybe not, it's worth it for me to fight this fight, but maybe not fight this fight this way.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah. So I've seen it, and I feel for you guys. I'm friends with you. I'm friends with Chris. Like, I appreciate you guys and your willingness to get ahead of the industry and kind of be, pave the way, pioneers of this industry in Fergus Falls, and it's coming. I hope that it happens in a way that the people that have been a part of this community and been a part of building it get to benefit on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of the community is tired of, I think they're tired of, on behalf of people like Chris and me, they're also tired of us having to fight. I'm tired of fighting. Chris is tired of fighting. We're not going to stop fighting. We found a lot of camaraderie in this last year with all of the city political hurdles. And the meeting you're referencing was in July of 2024.
Yeah.
That was,
I actually, I just ran into Scott Kwame on the street today. Actually, I talked to him a little bit. I talked to him a little bit on the street today, and I've come to, as I got to know him a little bit, I've come to really appreciate Scott for his openness and his willingness to have conversations with me. At least I've always had a really, really good time with that. He was asking me if he could get some old interviews, that I did with him, if he could get a copy of them. And so it's really, really cool. I think that I've seen conversations open. I've seen viewpoints shift. I've seen people open their minds a little bit, maybe not shift viewpoints, but I've definitely seen like a common, a compromise sort of, or but we have a long ways to go with that still. I feel like, I hope, I'm not going to get too into the current structure, the new structure of our new council. We don't really know how they're going to deal with this or how they're going to vote on these issues, if they're going to amend, ordinances that have already been passed in our city that allow.
Well, we can hope that they don't, where as it stands right now, we in the industry are of the mindset of, okay, there's nothing else we have to fight for now. You mentioned the governing power that the HF 100 bill left cities and municipalities as far as what they're able to control, zoning and proximities and things like that, and the number of licenses issued, that they're allowed to limit that. They're allowed to limit it to 1 per every 12,500 citizens, but they don't have to.
And the city has made the decision they have to issue 1, obviously.
And up to 2.
And they may issue up to 2.
Yep. And we I'll just call a spade here. We're under the presumption that those licenses will go to Elevate and Sugar High. And that would be great. That's kind of.
And the city, does the city get to choose who gets the license? If there's, let's say there's 3 or 4 people that all, but ultimately it's going to be a timely thing, right? Whoever gets approval from the state first and goes to the city for approval will not necessarily be guaranteed a license, but the city can't deny them if they're zoned properly.
Correct. And actually, part of that infrastructure is not even in place yet. Which is probably why some people are thinking, this ain't going to happen in Q1, or even in Q2. I'm not of that school of thought, but I'm more of a hopeful type, positive, forward thinking rather than pessimistic. But we don't know exactly how that's going to unfold. The state hasn't issued and published that language and those regulations yet. They honestly, I don't know if you're aware, they haven't even published the final official rules and regulations for the retail market. So we have assumptions based on other state models, what the dosing cap will be for products and, what sort of security measures we're going to be required to have, what sort of manufacturing protocol, those things aren't even published yet.
Right. And I think a lot of that here I'm seeing, I asked my assistant some of the setbacks that we've seen in the last year or year and a half since basically, this process was supposed to have been rolled out or in the process of being rolled out. There's been a lot of turnover for like leadership changes in the OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management. There's an interim director that was placed, I believe, a year or so ago to the original girl that was in charge of the Office of Cannabis Management. She got in trouble for
she only had 1 day in her position.
Yeah, she was there for like a day and basically got faced a bunch of charges for, I believe, selling full spectrum products or
something non-compliant.
With state code. So we've had this interim director, and that interim director is set to depart, if this information is accurate that I'm getting here, set to depart January 17th, 2025. And Eric Taubel, he is currently on the general council. He will assume the role of interim director. So he's not even a permanent director. They don't even know who's running the Office of Cannabis Management in Minnesota yet. And that, to me, has just a little bit I've witnessed has been the botchery of it all. Like, we legalized this thing and then we didn't set any framework in place to do anything about it or actually roll it out. And because of that, you have licensing delays, legal disputes have arisen that have led the OCM to abandon plans for pre-approval lottery intended for certain marijuana business applicants. I don't know.
That's the social equity.
Okay.
Yeah.
This decision has caused delays in the licensing procedure, making an early 2025 launch for retail sales increasingly unlikely. And so a lot of that stuff, it's a bummer to see. I think this was why, like, this is what the city of Fergus Falls did really well. And I think that they were commended for by people at the state. It's like they were ahead of it a lot more than probably even the state was. You know, we were having these conversations about how we were going to handle it locally here before apparently even
before
they were
it even legalized.
Figure it all out
before we
state,
legalized as a state, we've been having these conversations.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm hopeful.
I am too.
I'm hopeful for the industry, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of questions there. There's still, you know, I think that this transition into you going back to culinary school, which we haven't talked about in this episode yet. You going back to culinary school, obviously you want to be a wholesaler of, do you want to be a wholesaler of full spectrum cannabis?
Oh, no.
No, that's not what you don't want to produce that at all.
No.
So what do you see the hemp derived edible market dying off with legalization? Yeah.
Yep.
So
I think, well, here's the thing. I know. I've been in the industry for almost 5 years. We know what people want. We know the psychology behind it. We know that despite continued efforts to educate the community and consumers of our products and the others that we carry, that it doesn't matter whether THC comes from hemp or from marijuana. It's the same chemical compound and produces the exact same effect, has the same impact on your body. It's truly a legal, we don't really use the word loophole anymore. It's not a loophole. It's black and white. There are discernible differences between hemp and marijuana. This is
mainly pertaining to
the percentage of Delta 9 THC,
Okay.
which is that's the scientific Delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol. It's THC, right? And so the impact. I've got to touch on the impact of legalization. The impact of legalizing marijuana, even for now, just in the interim, for adult use, possession, and cultivation, has had a horribly detrimental impact on the hemp industry. Once upon a time, prior to August of 2023, the only legally accessible cannabis was hemp-derived product from little shops like Sugar High around the state, okay? Or if you were a medical patient. That's not what we're talking about here. So, then you legalize marijuana, you give people, and this is a great thing, don't get me wrong, you give people the freedom and the peace of mind to know that they can grow their own cannabis at home, marijuana specifically. They can possess, they can gift, they can give joints and ounces to their friends with no legal repercussion. And suddenly, we don't want that hemp anymore. We want the marijuana. We've always wanted the marijuana. We are waiting for the marijuana. That said, flip side, there is also a huge demographic of consumers, which is the bulk of our clients at Sugar High in that kind of 50 to 80 age bracket, who don't care. They don't care if it comes from hemp or marijuana. They want relief. They want to feel better. They're getting it.
They're not heavy users that
no.
Just like to disclose a little bit here. I've consumed a little bit of cannabis, enough so that when I eat like a Delta 8 gummy or I drink like an Uncle Arnie's iced tea or something, it just doesn't do it for me. It just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, you have a high tolerance. Yeah, and it's good. It's good to be self-aware and have a handle. This is, we harbor the idea and mentality that this should be a shameless act of self-love and discipline. Okay. So it's a judgment-free safe zone. But I hear what you're saying.
So again, and I do want to transition into talking about, because you said we want to spend a lot of the time talking about
well, I have a new business.
Yeah,
that's why we're here.
You have a new business, and the idea, I think, of transitioning into something different. You don't know how the licensing situation is going to go for sure. 6 months from now, if you don't have a license and somebody else does, nobody's coming into Sugar High anymore. So a hedge of having another business that isn't reliant on the state doing this or the city allowing you to do this, that is that's just smart business sense,
Right.
I think. So
Thank
I'm
you.
interested in hearing about it. I'm interested in hearing obviously your passion is for culinary arts.
Yeah.
You make really, really good treats.
Thank you.
So yeah, I haven't had, you didn't bring any meaty French pastries?
I know.
Oh.
School just resumed today after break,
Okay.
so got to brush up a bit.
But talk about that potentially transition out of the cannabis industry if that's the way things work out, or transition into this. Talk to me about the thought process of launching this.
Sure. Yeah. Well, when it really comes down to it, it really is a pretty full circle situation happening right now. I never went to college until I was 30. And that was when I moved to Fergus Falls, and I got a degree in sustainable food production and agriculture. So that has always been and remains and probably forever will be my number one passion. Sustainably produced food, culture, sociology with local food economies.
Yeah, you said you love that Acres of Eden episode, huh? Those guys are awesome, huh?
Invigorating. Yes, that was wonderful.
Yeah, if you haven't
wonderful.
caught the Acres of Eden episode, it's awesome. It's all about sustainable community, circular community farming.
Coming back to that, which has been
Absolutely.
lost. Yeah, Joel, Sean's great too, but Joel, I've known him for years. I remember waiting on him when I waited tables at the Fabled Farmer. He would come in and meet with maybe his business partner or mentor, and they would drink coffee. And I remember looking at the books on the table as I'd be bringing them coffee refills or their lunch or breakfast. And it was all about, restorative agriculture. And I would just talk forever with them. And that's when I remember him brainstorming the idea for Acres of Eden. So, those are the only eggs I buy if I don't get them from backyard chickens. Yeah, the timeliness was great. So the full circle, that there have been, here's the deal. Everyone in Fergus right now knows me as the sugar high person. I love that I have carved out that space and become that resource in the community. I'm not at the helm here. I don't know if it's God or whatever. I'm just doing the things that organically unfold for me. And I cherish that. Okay. So, I will say that I tend not to like stagnation and complacency. I like change. I like transition. I like riding the wave and the ebb and the flow. And I would never want to be stuck doing the same thing for the rest of my working life. I can tell you right now, and we'll get into Coquette, but that will probably not be the last business I open either. At some point in the last 5 years, I discovered that I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, of course.
Determining that through various entrepreneurial workshops offered by Greater Fergus Falls, mentors I've had, meetings I've had. It's just the energy that I have. So as far as answering your question,
I gotta ask. It's like a entrepreneurial psychology term. There's this chart, and maybe you've seen it. Have you seen the Valley of Despair chart?
I don't know.
Okay, you keep going wherever you're at. I'll come back to the Valley of Despair. I got to look it up here. Sure. It's the cycle of an entrepreneur, and when I show it to you, you're just gonna. If you haven't heard it before, you're just gonna be like, "Oh crap!"
Okay,
but I want to show it to you. But
yeah. So as far as full circle goes, I developed a passion for the local food economy years and years ago. And if I wasn't, waiting tables or managing in restaurants that offered those types of products, then I was growing the vegetables for them. Or, fast forward to, I think I'm really open and transparent about this, but a lot of people in the community know my struggle with addiction and my recovery journey, which I'm approaching 6 years. So in a lot of ways, I feel like that's when my life really began. And cannabis was a huge part of my early recovery, becoming a medical patient. Then I began cottage baking with the CBD edibles and the Delta 8. And then, of course, the state prohibits that. Then I obtained a degree in cannabis medicine and healthcare. This is early COVID. And I wasn't doing anything career-wise. I was waiting tables, which is honestly, sidebar, a lot of days when I'm really stressed out, I wish I could go back to waiting tables.
Just go back to waiting tables.
It's
surprise. You can.
I know.
You can.
I know. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that. So it was cottage baking during COVID, and that was a booming industry, making cakes, cupcakes, those things. And I wasn't what I would say passionate about making birthday cakes and cupcakes. It really turned into truly my income. I was doing, I think in the year 2021, I did like $45,000 of sales of just cupcakes, cakes, cookies, scones from home, and so that was a very lucrative, freeing entry into, oh, this is what it's like to work for yourself. Okay. Anyway, the whole my niche that I filled was that I used local ingredients. That's part of the full circle. It's like, well, I'm not going to go use. Can I swear on here?
No, not FCC.
I'm not gonna use the BS eggs from the grocery store. I'm gonna use the locally sourced healthy kind. I'm going to use pure cane sugar. These things taste better. These things value add the product that I'm producing. And, as the tides shifted, the state prohibited the cottage cannabis baking. I'm like, all right, that's when we shifted into the dispensary model, but only for so long until we launched the manufacturing. Again, introducing locally sourced ingredients and fusing that together with my cannabis baked goods, confectionery passion, creating more jobs in the community, and that we launched those we launched them in 2024, and so it's been about a year. I think February in 24, we launched those.
Wow.
And then to touch on what you brought up earlier, we broke into distribution. So you can find sugar high edibles throughout the state of Minnesota.
Awesome.
At many retailers.
That's so awesome.
Anyhow, so the
and congratulations on that. That's a really cool, like, even if you don't make that transition, or don't have any plans of making the transition into the full spectrum marijuana edibles, like, that's a super cool accomplishment just to have this little period of time. Even just a short period of time where sugar high edibles are all across the state. That's really cool.
Well, and it's extra special because here's the painful reality. Again, in the spirit of things I've learned as a business owner in any industry, but especially the cannabis, there's a lot of white labeling in this industry. And I discovered a few years ago, before we even opened Sugar High, when I went up to visit a classmate of mine's dispensary up in the Twin Ports area, that's when I discovered what white labeling was all about in business. And I knew right then and there, I'm like, wait, you mean you're putting your name on this, but you didn't actually make what's in it? I hate that.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense. I mean, I get it. People have different motives. People are money driven. I'm not money driven. Okay. I'm quality driven. Absolutely. Quality over quantity. I'm reputation driven. Maybe my therapist would say I care too much what people think about me. I don't care. I want to produce a quality local product that created a local job. You know how much white labeling is done in this industry? You don't ever know
Every industry.
You don't, and it's no different. You don't ever know what you're going to get. We're always transparent about it. We try and source as many Minnesota produced products as we can. Also, once we integrate, we'll be required to use only Minnesota sourced products. So that will be a really nice peace of mind for consumers and retailers who care about that. So that's another reason why I was so excited about and am about the launch of Sugar High edibles. We use local Millerville butter in our caramels. Yeah, I will die on this hill. We make the best caramels in the state of Minnesota. We use flavorless, odorless distillate in them, so you can't even taste weed. Just pure buttery cane sugar, organic cane sugar, just bliss, right? So we're currently carrying those all across the state. So that's just another little insight into how I roped in my original passion of local, into that.
All right, so serial entrepreneur. We're gonna get into the patisserie now, but before we do, I'm gonna come back to this. This is the Valley of Despair chart. So it starts here. You can see it starts with the uninformed optimism. That's where you start. You don't know what you're doing. You're just like starting this business off. You're optimistic because you can do this business. You're excited about it. You're passionate, and then you enter a period. Phase 2 would be informed pessimism. You start to realize how hard this is actually going to be, and the grind that's ahead of you. And then after that, you go into the Valley of Despair. And this chart, I can just relate to this chart so much for everything that's happened with the show, everything that continues to happen with the show. you spend a lot of time in that valley of despair where it's really, really, really tough and discouraging. And then at some point, phase 4, you start to get a little informed optimism. So the informed optimism kicks in. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's still really, you're not there yet. And then the next step is success and fulfillment. So, but a lot of people, what will happen is they'll go into phase 1, the uninformed optimism, phase 2, informed pessimism, and then they'll enter the valley of despair, and then they'll just go back to phase 1 with something else, with back to that uninformed optimism about the next venture. And so I think everyone who is an entrepreneur needs to see that and needs to understand the psychology of what happens when you go into business. And I'm not a business guy. I run a podcast where I've interviewed a lot of business people. I think I went through that valley with the podcast. I'm still I feel like I would say I'm probably more in the informed optimism stage, hopefully on my way out of the valley of despair with the podcast. You never know. But
you know what adds a whole layer? It is a grind. And what adds a whole layer of complexity to that is the fact that were you in charge of your own income? Or were you not? Were you getting a paycheck, or was your income entirely up to you? That will send straight to that valley, and this is a great segue. So while I was in the valley of despair, I actually, as you're going through that, I know where I'm at. I'm in between phase 4 and 5. Bless. I didn't throw the towel in. I wanted to very much. After that last city council meeting, this is the transition. It was very, very challenging for me mentally to get through these hurdles, these challenges. Many thoughts like, is this worth it? It's not even, it's really hard to explain. But also so easy. I just got tired of fighting. I got tired of fighting ignorance. I got tired of fighting, uninformed individuals regulating something they still don't understand. It was just so taxing on my mental health. And I, as an individual human, have a lot, people, I'm a hard worker. I have the luxury of time. I don't have a family or children. I live alone. I have the luxury to work hard. Okay. I look at that as a luxury. I look at things a little differently than most, certainly more than someone who's never struggled with addiction. Because when you've pulled yourself up from the depths, a different valley of despair, and have a taste of actual functionality and productivity and contributing to your community, it changes real fast. The pressure is on, okay? So a lot of layers, a lot of complexities, depth we don't have to go into, but that chart is very relatable. And, here we are, I'm never gonna give up on this fight. That's the bottom line. Yeah. We've come so far and done most of the heavy lifting and legwork and dirty work. Now what we're hoping for is, what's the name of that phase 5 again?
Phase 5 is success and fulfillment.
Yeah.
After informed optimism.
Yeah. I think we're hovering right between 4 and 5. We're hopeful. We don't have to go back to that conversation. There's no reason to believe that we won't become a licensed integrated retailer of marijuana, and when that time comes, here's the thing. It's a lot of pros and cons with small business ownership, a lot of pros and cons with having employees. It's not for everybody. Okay. I love where Sugar High is right now. I love where we're going. I love my staff. They run that store. That is their dispensary. I handle big picture. They handle day to day. It is a truly remarkable blessing. How we have grown. Every employee that I currently have has been there from day one. Okay. So that said, during this very relatable valley of despair period, which would have been a lot of 2024 for me, early to mid 2024, or basically, all of the year until about fall. I was traveling in Spain. I had been to France 6 months prior. And I've always baked, always. I've been baking since I was 10. When my mom died and we relocated from Southern California to Fargo, for her brother, my uncle, to step in and help raise my siblings and me. He had worked as a chef before and cooked from scratch, and he taught me how to make my first strawberry shortcake biscuit at 9 or 10 years old. And everything changed after that. My entire outlook on food, that's a whole precursory to my, studying sustainable agriculture, food production, local economies, all that. It all plays into it. When I moved to Fergus Falls to be a nanny, I would spend a lot of time baking with my nephew, not knowing what I'm doing, just looking up recipes. But it's just, I've always had a knack for it and appreciated ingredients. So traveling to Europe, when I went to France in 2023, that was my first time in Europe. Totally life-changing, and that sounds so cliche, but it was just, I felt like I was with my people, and the moment that everything changed, it was a moment. It was an epiphanic moment. It was my last night in Barcelona. I was walking to my dinner reservation, and I had walked past my millionth corner patisserie or boulangerie or just little bakery. And the smells, I'd come in, I would walk into all of them. Most of them you can't sit in. You just grab and go. You grab your baguettes, your breads, your little fancy pastries, your fancy cakes, your fruit tarts, your creme brulees, all the things, right? And it felt so community oriented. And I'm talking to some of the people who speak English in these patisseries, and I'm thinking like, so where do you get your ingredients? And most of them, they're just from the community. And that really spoke to me. And I walked past the bazillionth patisserie, looked in the window, and I'm thinking, okay, actually, this is what I want to do. I had this moment, and I'm like, you know what? This stress is not sustainable for me. I'm not quitting, but it is not sustainable. And I used to be afraid to admit that publicly because there's this pressure to be the person that I curated. I don't care.
Well, and have you since stopped using cannabis too?
Yeah.
You don't use cannabis anymore.
That's all part of my story and my transition. It's very personal, but I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to go. I'm not going to use the expression "go public," but to talk openly about this because we're not. Again, I don't believe that we're really in control. I have to tell myself that because I'm a control freak. But back to the transition. So I had stopped using cannabis when I had this realization. I had not been using cannabis for about 9 months at that time. Okay. It's been about a year and a half now. July of 2023 is the last time I consumed cannabis. And to spare for time, I developed an aversion to it and discovered that I felt better without it. I started exercising more, eating differently, lost a lot of weight, and my mental health has improved. Am I always going to be sugar high lady and here for people? Absolutely. And I'm getting ahead of myself here with my plan and my trajectory, but the cannabis industry long-term for me is not sustainable. And again, I used to harbor a little bit of like guilt and kind of shame for that. And, I stopped, I realized, what, we only have one life. I had that moment where I walked by that patisserie and I said, you know what? We don't have this in Fergus Falls. All we have are, we have a bread shop. We have like donuts at a couple places.
We have super good artisan cupcakes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
like
the cottage
Jenny
baker
does an awesome
good
job,
friend of mine. We have the cake, we have the cakeries, we have the cupcakeries, we have the people you can cut. And here's the thing, again, to remind, I wasn't ever passionate about making cakes and cupcakes. That's not my thing. I just did that as a job, because it was when I got that taste of freedom to do it from home. And I'm like, I'll crank out a batch of cupcakes. And I got really into it. And I guess I had a talent. I'm my own worst critic, of course, but that's never been the kind of baking that I'm passionate about. I'm not passionate about using food coloring in buttercream frosting. No disrespect, but that's not the vibe, right? So I called my sister when I had that moment. It was 6 hours earlier here because I was ahead 6 hours. She was on her lunch break from work. I cried because I felt the greatest relief. That's the only word I can think to use, relief, because I was really at a dead end mentally. I was not enjoying what I was doing anymore at all. I was tired of fighting, and my worst fight it was still ahead of me yet. But mentally making the decision to focus on eventually opening another new business is what broke me out of that pit valley. It started to swing. You know, I didn't make, I don't ever, I'm a slow and steady wins the race kind of gal. You know, it took me 6 months to open Sugar High once I signed my lease on that space downtown. Slow and steady, you know? And it's the same thing with Coquette. You know, it's things that I've discovered and decided since I had that epiphany, right? I wanted to share that out loud, by the way, with someone to make it real and for accountability. I kept it quiet for a little while and then decided, well, here's the thing. What do I need to do to make that happen? I don't want to just open a French patisserie without being a pastry chef, you know? And so, and I do really well in school. I like being a student. I like learning and expanding. And so I looked into culinary schools, enrolled in Auguste Escoffier, which is based out of Boulder, Colorado. Surprisingly, they do an incredible online culinary platform. So I enrolled in school. I started in August. It is very intense, very time consuming, very rewarding. I will be done in November. It's a 15-month program that includes a 150-hour externship. I'll open my patisserie before I'm done with school. Soft open, very limited, part-time just to get the feel. But I did lease a space in July.
Okay.
So I've been paying rent at my space while I slowly have these things come together, you know, painting, securing a business loan, getting my equipment, slow and steady.
Yeah, and Sugar High moved.
Yeah, we did.
As well.
And my patisserie location, incidentally, is immediately next door.
To the new location.
Yeah,
So they're going to be right next door to each other.
Right next door.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And now, again, it has to do with licensing and all sorts of stuff. They will be separate entities.
Absolutely.
Absolutely separate entities.
Yep.
There's no chance of I believe a mezzo license allows for the consumption of edibles on site.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Don't care about that.
No.
Okay.
My mindset has shifted. It's growing. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. I'm dedicated to Sugar High, my business. We have a lot more to accomplish before I'm even thinking of officially getting out of that industry. This is a years down the road, I'm talking, right? It's just I'm insane and like to do a lot of work, and I like to challenge myself, so I'm just doing it all.
Yep.
You know, again, the luxury of time. So I'm going to be, you know, doing all of this at the same time, but having the thing that I love about business ownership is that once you reach a certain point, you get a little more freedom. I get to be a little bit more hands off. Not this year. This is going to be this is the integration year. Fingers crossed. This is not my chillaxing year at all. School, opening Coquette, integrating into a regulated marijuana market. I'm highly overwhelmed. Don't think I'm not. I mean, I'm confident, but I am freaking overwhelmed, you know? So, but the thing anyway, but bringing it back to, you know, why it wasn't just, it was the part of that epiphanic moment and realization was we still, after all this time that I've lived here and been passionate, a lot of people know me as a Sugar High lady. A lot of people know me as a different Emily. They know me as the sustainable food Emily, the one that, started the farmer's market for her internship, as the vendor coordinator. That's my roots here. All the old crunchy hippie old farts that are, having the slow food potlucks and.
Hey, you be careful how you talk to all those KBRF listeners.
Oh,
we got a couple minutes here left on air for KBRF, and then we'll just be on Spotify after the 50-minute mark. Technically, you could probably swear, maybe talk, but I don't need you talking about derogatory terms towards my KBRF
that is
listeners.
That is a playful term. I love you. You are my favorite people, which is why I'm here. So anyway, making that return, and I really enjoy. I started spending some free time fantasizing and planning and thinking about, well, what would I do to make this bakery stick out, and what services and what can I do that no one else is doing? Another reality. Here's the deal. I enjoy filling a niche that other people aren't. And as soon as a lot of other people start doing that thing, I lose interest very quickly. Okay. So it's important to me, you know,
Be different. It's important for you to be
important
different.
for me to be different and offer something, an edge that other people aren't, you know? So with my patisserie, you know, it's getting to combine and marry together my love of locally sourced ingredients and local food and the community and, you know, bringing the glam, you know, bringing the fancy. There's nowhere to go to get a decadent, fancy grab and go. You know, this patisserie will not be a dine-in. It will be very limited space for the customer to walk in.
Yeah. So let's talk about the patisserie a little bit. The history of the patisserie from my assistant here. It looks like Middle Ages, 13th century. The concept of a patisserie begins in France with guilds of bakers specializing in fine baked goods, pies, tarts, filled pastries. These early bakers laid the foundation for the French pastry tradition. Have you been learning about this in culinary school? Do you learn about the roots of it? So obviously baked goods, I mean, different. Have they changed much over the years?
Well, it depends on where you're sourcing them. You know, the patisserie, what word am I looking for? Not revolution. There's been a huge surge of patisseries and boulangeries. Only difference being who's at the helm, a pastry chef or not. You know, that's that clout, that certification. Okay.
Okay.
Well, you know,
that's the distinguishing factor. If a certified pastry chef is running it, it's a patisserie.
Well, depending on what country you're in. In America, anything goes. In European countries, absolutely. You can't call yourself a patisserie unless you're a certified pastry chef.
Okay.
Yep. In America, you can call yourself whatever you want. I mean, #freedom. Okay. But for me,
you can be whatever you want here.
And I love that. I love that about being American. But I took that really seriously. I did research. I've been to many French bakeries in various places I've traveled and lived. There's a heavy French vibe in my family. You know, my sister was the worked as the visiting librarian at the American Library in Paris for 2 months. She's, of course, the youth librarian in town here. And I took my niece and nephew out to visit. I took French in school. We've just always really enjoyed the French culture, foods, baked goods, all that stuff. So yes, I knew I wanted to make those fancy, where you walk in and like the macarons and the colorful, the edible gold flake, the tall but miniature rounded cakes, you know, the French mousse, things that you can't make as a cottage baker, actually. You know, so that was part of it too. I'm like, you know, it'd be, I could just be a cottage baker again and do it from home, but I couldn't make any of the things. I wouldn't be able to make any of the things that I want to make, that I feel confident about, the cheesecakes, anything that requires refrigeration, the custards, the tarts, like you were just getting into, all that historical. No, it hasn't changed much. Not the way I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
It's changed in terms of production and scale, you know, like when you go into, you know, a large supermarket and buy a container of croissants, that's not a croissant.
So talk about then like what time frame for potentially opening this place up.
Yeah, so I'm shooting for a soft open in April.
Okay.
But I'm not setting any hard concrete for my mental health. I'm not putting any concrete timelines. Yeah. I'm shooting for April. Okay. And I am very confident that I can reach that goal.
What kind of licensing do you have to go through to get that?
It's not so much licensing as it is making sure you're following code. So health department inspections to make sure, you know, our sinks are to code, our flooring, our wall paneling. Another unique thing about this patisserie is that, and a lot of people have been reaching out asking, you know, I created a brand, I created a logo, I created a Facebook page, and that's all I can do for now, right? But more to come. A lot of people have been asking, you know, well, will I be able to find your products at restaurants, you know, on their desserts and stuff? It's like, no, I'm not going to bite off more than I can chew. Mm-hmm. The true European patisserie model is you bake in the morning and that's what you have that day. And when you sell out, you sell out. You know, I've talked with one friend who has a restaurant in Henning, who's another one of my sustainable foodie friends. They're farmers, and they have the farm stand in Henning. So they're the meat farmers.
Oh, you got to get me in contact with those guys
She would
for an
love
episode.
Brittany and Steven. They would love to come on.
I would love that.
So I did promise her that I would make their pie crusts, right, and their pies from time to time. So I source local pastured hog lard from their farm for my pie crusts.
Okay.
I use a half butter, half lard. And so that's just one example of some collab and cross promotional stuff. But this is a very small operation. So in the building space that I lease, there's no output for vents.
Okay.
So my equipment has to be all recirculating air. So
Okay.
I have to get really specialized equipment and ovens.
I feel like that's how they get you, is they pump the air out into the streets.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly you know, you're not wrong. Every time I go by Bimbo Bakery, I'm just like,
I live in the Bimbo Bakery parking lot, and it's like I get up like, oh, they're making bread. It smells so good.
Yeah, so I won't have that, but so it'll be a very, very unique, very small operation, and I don't know what the future holds. I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have a lot on my plate anyway for these next few years while I navigate through, you know, running multiple businesses.
What's the, and obviously you're gonna get into a menu and all the stuff, but you said limited menu to start with. Have you thought about what that looks like?
Yeah.
How much is a croissant gonna cost?
Yeah, well, I don't know that yet, but I can tell you some decisions that I've made. And it's been really helpful to be in culinary school and go through this program and these classes that aren't just about how to make Cherry's Jubilee. You know, a big overarching component of culinary school, this is specifically a pastry arts program, is preparing the student to enter the industry and work for someone else. Okay. But in some of our so you know, we're learning plating. We're learning plating for service, which means to serve to a diner on location, as opposed to a grab and go. But some of our more academic classes do touch on, in detail. You know, classes resumed after Christmas break today. And one of my classes is cost management. So it's going over exactly what you just asked about. So I don't have an answer yet, but I'm learning the calculations, and it helps. It really gives me an edge and help, having already been a business owner. Yep. I'm in retail. I know about profit and loss, and margins. And so, you know, I have payroll. I've really got a leg up on that. To myself, I suppose. So some concrete things, you know, there will be some concrete, you know, my entire menu is going to be seasonal and based on what's available locally. Thankfully, flour, butter, and eggs are the 3 pillars of pastry and are all available locally all the time where we live. You know, various, you know, butter and eggs, butter, Millerville, eggs, multiple sources, but I will be contracting with Acres of Eden. And flour, you know, whether we're getting from Swaney Mills or from, in the Fargo, Moorhead area, there are a lot of heritage wheat growers that are bringing back those kind of European strains of grain. And so I'll be doing sort of like...
Are you going to be grinding your own flour in the back?
Well, I'm going to purchase hand-milled grain. You know, I can only do so much, but that's quite the aesthetic. That's quite the look. So, you know, things, croissants, pain au chocolat, which is a chocolate-filled croissant, baguettes, those macarons, those will be daily staples in my patisserie. But other than that, it will be changed based on what's locally available, you know? And I mean, to get the vision, it's like, picture the peak market season at the farmer's market, which is going to be most of my connections for ingredients. You know, when big, beautiful heirloom tomatoes are in season, right? That's when you'll find the rustic tomato tart at Coquette, you know, by the whole pan or by the slice. You know, that's a savory tart that I'll be offering. Year round, I'll be doing quiche, you know, but the flavors will change. You know, other things that are always available, meats, local pastured meats, pork sausage, breakfast sausage, beef. It's not just going to be sweets. It'll be sweet and savory.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Small menu, but sweet
Yeah.
and savory. Some staples. And then mostly, I mean, my business model and concept is farm to table and seasonal. So it will always be changing. And again, with the I like to keep things fresh and change, which is probably why I'm not married and have no kids, you know? But I like that, you know? It keeps things fresh.
Yeah.
So April, we're looking at.
April.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be cool. It'll be good for you to have just both businesses right there. You'll live there.
I know.
But no,
I'm already an early riser. You know, the cliche of the bakers getting up at 2, 3 in the morning. Look, right when I got clean in 2019, my first job in recovery was making the donuts at Casey's gas station. And I swear that was one of the best things I've ever done for myself, was work making the donuts at the gas station for a year, to the day. Learning that getting up early, I still go to bed early and get up early. It's just part of it. It's the rebrand of Emily McCune.
Yeah, dang. Well, shoot, Emily, we just crossed the 1 hour mark. I know you mentioned you have some other things going on this evening as well, so a little bit of a time crunch, but what a good conversation. What an awesome conversation. I think that there's more conversations with Emily to be had at some point, probably.
Yeah.
I know that the cannabis thing you mentioned would make a great roundtable discussion.
I would love to participate.
I would
in
love
that.
to get, again, I just ran into Scott Kwame today out on the street. I'd love to get him in on that conversation. I'd love to get Chris in on that conversation. I'd love to get some different minds together and talk about some stuff.
So would I.
I think that'd be really fun. Maybe
It's gonna be a really intense year for the industry.
It is.
And this is the time to be having those conversations.
Yeah,
it is.
absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
we're beyond some of the hurdles, and some of them have not presented yet.
Right.
You know.
Obviously, you know, you're part of, we didn't talk about this at all. I want to get you and Chris Schulke on for like a downtown history episode. We didn't really talk about history of downtown at all. There's a lot of cool potential content that we could still get, but I really appreciate you coming on for this hour and talking today.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Looking forward to it again.
Yeah. Anything else on your mind that you wanted to talk about or address before we got off the air here?
No, just to thank you for the opportunity to share and be heard and, you know, provide the safe space. There's a lot of complex emotions that I've discovered being a business owner in this uncharted territory. And, you know, at the end of the day, even through all the tension and turmoil and fighting, I still am so grateful for the community of Fergus Falls. You know, what's not hurting right now are sales and loyalty. And I am so grateful for that, for the community. And thank you for giving me the platform to, you know, outside of Facebook, to thank our community for that. We wouldn't be here without the support. The proof is in the support. We are a needed, valued industry, the cannabis industry. And make no mistake, I will never waver from that. This new business venture, this is more just Emily flavor. Like, I need to get out of my head and do something on top of what I'm doing so I can stay sane and redirect thoughts and also live my best life doing my other passions. You know, I have multiple passions, and I love this community for enabling me. Here's the thing. I have no doubt that the community will literally and figuratively eat up my patisserie. You know why? They support Emily McCune. And I love that about this community. So the political figures, law enforcement, through all the challenges, I am so grateful.
Yeah.
This has been so growth promoting for me. And I'm not throwing the towel in. This is just adding another layer to the colorful story of me.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to chat anytime. Thank you.
Love it. Yeah. One more question before we
Sure.
get out of here. I asked you this, you did get this question. I don't know if we were doing best business advice in episode 3. I'm not sure
Well,
if
we
that
were,
segment,
but it's probably changed.
it's changed
in
a
2
little bit.
years.
And I'm sure that your maybe your advice has changed, but this segment now sponsored by Liberty Business Systems. What do you have for us?
Yeah.
Best business advice.
I'll have to go back and listen to my other one, but before I do, because I'm curious, I have a very quick response. Take the risk. Always take the risk. I can't, it seems so simple to me when you look at it objectively. if you don't take risks, you'll never know what could have come out the other side. You'll never know where you could land, take the leap, so to say, right? So to speak. One thing I'm not is fearful. I'm fearless, and I can't imagine living any other way. The worst thing that can happen is you'll fail. Then you do something else. Who cares? We are living in such an uptight and stressed out and isolated communities and society and culture, I feel right now. And I love seeing, what COVID-19 did to the entrepreneur and the bustling, just the busting at the seams, independent entrepreneurship. I lived it. I never thought I would own a business, and anyway, I really think that if people could embrace the idea of it's okay if this doesn't work out, at least you get to have that chapter and that lived experience, and you will learn. So my best business advice, take the risks, find something that other people aren't doing, and then be the best at it so that when other people do start doing it, you can then shift again and do the next thing that no one's doing.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And stay out of the valley of despair.
That's inevitable. You can come out. You can crawl out. I crawled out. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I think it's very important psychology of entrepreneurship for people to understand for sure. So, appreciate it, Emily. Appreciate the time. Appreciate all of you guys listening, taking the time out of your lives to listen to this. Really appreciate the sponsors: Atlas Outdoor Services, Outstate Brewing, Stumbinos, Victor Lundeen's, Fergus Home and Hardware, Liberty Business Systems, and Wayne Schuett with Century 21 Atwood. So, yeah, if you guys want to, follow the show on social media platforms. I'm sure there's people that are listening that don't follow me. It helps spread the message. I appreciate any interactions on the socials. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week. You can email the show ffbspodcast@gmail.com if you want to come on it. So looking forward to the future guests here. Thanks again, Emily.
Thanks.